All right, as Rich mentioned, we're going to switch gears a little bit to the the financial. So I'm going to give a little presentation about the true cost of water supplies, and then Clooney Mercer's going to come up after that, and many of you guys shouldn't remember him from working in your department. So when I was thinking about the true cost of water, a lot of the communities that we met up with in another portion of this project, people don't really want to pay, right? Water should be free according to a few people we've met along the way. I don't believe that. I'm sure many of you don't. So I sort of looked into it from trying to look at it from that standpoint. And what I came up with is, it is a human right to have clean and safe drinking water. Each person has the right to 80 to 100 liters of clean, disinfected water every day. And that is so you stay well, so you're not ill, so that, when you get into something with the UN, you're thinking about the people in Africa who are walking with water on their heads sort of thing. Like, it's a really big deal to be able to have universal access to clean and safe drinking water. But when you go through the UN's documentation, even for the people in Africa who are walking and really have true issues with safe drinking water, it still doesn't say that it should be free. There should be help for people who can't access it or pay for it, but there's nowhere written that the water should be free. And then if we go back to the Walkerton report, one of the things that came out of that is that as a general principle, municipalities should raise adequate resources for their water system from local revenue sources, barring exceptional circumstances. So there's not a person in this room who is actually doing that. Much of the money is coming from provincial and federal sources, but we're all paying for it one way or the other. And this is suggesting that it would be paid on a local level. So I'm just going to run through the cost of what we pay for other things that are liquid and we buy by the liter. So gasoline, when I made this, we were paying about $1.34 a liter. Right now it's fortunately much less, which is nice. Tim Hortons coffee costs about $4 a liter, and a lot of people, particularly, that in my mind ends up being a priority over clean water. Milk, we pay about $2 a liter, and bottled water also costs about $2 a liter. And when we get to tap water on a federal level, you're not even paying 0.1 of a cent. So 1/10 of a cent per liter is what safe drinking water costs as a whole. So I think it's worth it. I hope that everybody in this room also thinks it's worth it. We don't need to be drinking water out of a bottle. It can be done on a much safer level and much cheaper. And we just have to sort of buy into it. So one of the tools that the province has available to each community is called a full cost accounting assessment tool. And full cost accounting is that idea of raising the money locally. So a definition is to ensure financial sustainability, water utilities must be able to, 1, secure enough revenue to recover costs and service debt. 2, buffer against unexpected circumstances, and 3, save for future capital needs. So a lot of people aren't doing this quite yet, but this is an ideal scenario. So the tool itself looks like this. It's an Excel spreadsheet that is available on the BWA website that is noted here on the bottom. You can just download it and play with it yourself. There's instructions in there. It's fairly straightforward actually, and people like us can help you walk through it, or Denine's group, anyone in that government group. So you choose your community name, the date, you do it for the year, and you'll put in what you spent on your source, on what you spent on the pumping, what you spent on treatment and disinfection, transmission and distribution, and administration. So this was a community we worked with last year. The numbers may be a little bit skewed because people aren't necessarily keeping track of their finances directly in this way. But when you plug in all of those numbers, this model spits out a recommended annual investment. So in this case, I'm not sure where that $12,000 came from for the supply, but it's recommending they spend half of that amount on the supply or on the source, and more on everything else, right? So they're really low on funds in the treatment and disinfection and in the distribution sections, and they weren't accounting for anything for administration. It costs money for people to take care of your water systems. So the next thing this model does is it spits out a recommended water tax for the community. So this one was charging $300 per household for water tax. And they actually came out, they could charge less. They weren't maybe even using that $300 for their water source. But it also spits out how much to fund an investment, to fund future stuff. And that amount for that community they could use even more, an extra $200 a year to help fund future operations. So, and that's available to you, as I said. And I just sort of gave you a quick overview of that. There's a little bit more to it, but it's worth having a look at for the communities. So now Clooney is going to come up and discuss the municipal funding. So now that I've convinced you should fund it yourself, Clooney's going to tell you how to get other funding sources.